Alright, so this video is probably going to be pretty boring because there's a lot of technical stuff to it, but it's extremely important. This video is proving God. It's how to quantify God. And I know it's a bold claim, but it's actually not. There's a reason we can't see God, and it's because of an error that we refuse to observe. We refuse to look at the error, and the error stops us from seeing the truth. So you can actually consider the error a lie. But to jump right into it without further ado, we are in an enclosed system. You can think of it like a simulation, you can think of it like a program, right? It's an enclosed system. All the data is stored because that's what we are. We're information and data. And everything is about consciousness, self-awareness, right? So what is self-awareness? And that's the question that you have to ask yourself. If you wanted to create self-awareness in, say, a video game or a simulation, I'm going to go ahead and make Miss Pack Eve and Pack Adam. When you want to create a simulation and have these characters in the simulation be intelligent and self-aware, you have to ask yourself, what does self-aware mean? Because there's two types of self-awareness. Self-awareness number one is something we're all familiar with, and that's self-conscious. We are very insecure in our bodies. We are very insecure with who we are. Why is that? We're aware of ourselves, but we don't like ourselves. It's kind of a weird thing, right? And then the second kind of self-awareness is self-acceptance, right? It's like, I may not be happy with some things, but I accept myself. And that acceptance brings you self-happiness, right? The same concept goes to these conscious beings inside this simulation that you're trying to make. In order for them to be self-aware, they're going to have to accept the system, because they can't be a self if they're rejecting the system. Does that make sense? So if you could put yourself in their shoes and imagine yourself waking up, just full-grown body, you're a full-grown being, and there's a God there telling you, hey, you're a being in my system. Everything's good, it's done, no need to worry. That's got to be a weird feeling, right? Like, okay, well, who created you? You're going to have all kinds of questions, right? Now, the main thing that you have to understand, that since this is an enclosed system, all of the information is done, okay? It's done. So they can't rewrite the system. Do you understand? So if they become insecure questioning themselves, then they're going to try to change themselves, and they're going to try to change the system, right? Well, how do you do that if the system's already finished and you're a simulation? Well, you can't. So what you end up doing is you end up becoming buggy by rejecting the system, because everything in the system is written in a particular code, and if you're rejecting that code, you're going to crash, right? Hence why we have death. Now, in the Bible, it said that there were two trees. There was the tree of knowledge, and then back here, that was, everyone seems to ignore, was the tree of life. Now, by introducing a simple choice for these intelligent beings, it makes them independent of the programmer. Now, something that's very important to understand of this is that all of our advanced technology that we have, all of our computer programming and processing, we cannot make sentient beings. We don't have the technology to make actual intelligence. The best we can do is artificial intelligence. Now, granted, artificial intelligence is pretty impressive. The artificial intelligence can learn, but essentially it's just learning what we tell it to learn. It's just doing what we program it to do. Artificial intelligence just does the program. Whatever's written, that's it. Doesn't make its own decisions. You with me so far? By introducing an option here, you can accept the system, the tree of life, or you can reject the system, the tree of knowledge. You're now creating a choice for them to make on their own. The programmer did not write that choice. That's the one thing that's not finished in this enclosed system. The one piece of information that sentient beings have to make on their own. They got to choose one or the other. Now, as the programmer, I'm going to warn them, you don't want the tree of knowledge, because it's going to be painful. You're going to get buggy. You're going to try to rewrite the system, and you're going to try to rewrite all of my code, and you can't. So it's just going to create pain upon yourself. So what ends up happening because they ate from that tree of knowledge, they now start to get buggy and they crash. So instead of going out of control into insanity and spiraling out of control inside their own heads, death, right? It's a reboot. Just like your cell phone, when it starts to get buggy, you got to shut it down and reboot it. Right? Your computer's getting buggy, customer service is always going to tell you, hey, did you try turning it off and back on again? Because you have to reset the system. So death is nothing to a programmer who's writing the system. Death is actually a reprieve, right? It's like you are buggy, you're putting yourself through a lot of pain, death. Well, once they start feeding off of each other, they make the pain worse. And once they start multiplying, they make the pain worse. But before I jump into all of that, I'm going to now get into the error specifically. Okay? The error is pretty easy to understand because it doesn't exist. It's our misinterpretation of these two factors. We've got 0 and we've got infinity. They don't know what that means. To them, the simulation, they're trying to figure it out. See, because what they think it means is that this means nothing, right? And it's a number. And this means forever, also a number. Now, with all of their calculations and trying to figure things out and trying to understand where they are because they rejected the system, they are trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together themselves. Okay? Not realizing that it's already done, right? They're on this path to try to figure things out, but the job's already done. So nothing doesn't actually exist. It's not a thing. Forever doesn't exist because the system's enclosed. It's complete. Okay? And I know it blows your mind at first because you're like, whoa, wait a minute. What about all the math that we've done? Well, okay, so here we're gonna have a little fun. Okay, we're gonna do the infamous philosophy of the glass being half empty and half full, right? Because of this, thinking that it's a thing, thinking that nothing's a thing, so essentially they're going around looking for nothing. They're like, we have to find it because we have to fix it. We have to fix it, and then they're going around looking for it. So they make this section nothing. Get it? They call it empty. Okay, but let's be real. Life is not two-dimensional. It doesn't go from 0 to infinity like we think it does. All right? It is, empty does not exist because we know in chemistry that there's solids, liquids, and gases. The container is solid, the liquids, the water is liquid, and the oxygen is a gas. It's full, right? It's full, it's done, it's finished. It's a complete system. And I know that that's confusing because we're so used to being told that 0 is a number. So now you have to honestly ask yourself, why is it a number? And so over here, I'm going to draw another system. Okay? And I'm going to show you characters here. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then that next number is going to get confusing. Because you've been told that that next number is going to be a 1 with another number next to it, a 0. But that's error. 0 doesn't exist. We try to cram it in, but it doesn't serve a purpose. It's irrelevant, right? In coding, in an enclosed system, in coding, if you know JavaScript or C++, it's called null. It's another word for void. Anytime there's an element that's irrelevant, the program just skips over it. It's null. So we try to put something there that doesn't exist and try to make it a reality. Does that make sense? So instead, we're going to steal from Roman numerals and we're going to go X instead, okay? Because X is the value of 10 digits. Works for me. We don't need a 0. We don't need a 1 and a 0. 10 can be its own number by itself, right? We don't need the 0 number. It doesn't serve a purpose. So the next number, it's now going to repeat the sequence, okay? So in that next number, you're going to have 1x. Or, sorry, it'll be x1, x1, and then x2, and then x3, and then x4. You see where I'm going with this? The 0 is irrelevant. You can replace it with anything. 0 is a symbol for a wash. You have something, and then you don't have it anymore. Doesn't mean it disappeared because energy can't be created or destroyed. It just changes shapes. It just transitions into something else. Okay, so in school we teach our kids that they have 1 cupcake plus 1 cupcake equals 2 cupcakes, right? Now, if you have 1 cupcake minus 1 cupcake, we tell them that they have 0 cupcakes, but that's error. All right, the true answer is right here. They have -1 cupcakes. You don't get to erase the cupcake from existence. Okay, how do you have nothing? It doesn't make any sense, but we try to shoehorn it into our math. You hearing me? Is this making sense? This error makes us think that forever exists because we start putting that 0 in between numbers. So in between 1 and 2, we try to put a whole bunch of zeros, 0.000001. That 0 just makes us buggy because we're looking for it. It doesn't exist. The system is complete. It's a complete order of numbers. Now, any kind of paradox, just Google it for fun, right? Mathematical paradoxes, they all revolve around this. You've got Hilbert's paradox, you've got Zeno's paradox, you've got Banach-Tarski's paradox. They all are involved around cramming 0 in as a number or looking for forever. Okay? Fibonacci is the one that actually figured it out. I don't know how to spell it. Fibonacci, I think that's it. Fibonacci sequence, aka the golden ratio, he said that 1 is the sum equal, or infinity, I messed that up. Infinity is the sum equal to 1. Okay? That looks like an 8. Sorry. Let me fix that. I know that's confusing, so I gotta do the infinity. Okay. Infinity is the sum equal to 1. It means it's complete. See, because infinity just repeats itself. It's an enclosed system. Okay? And if you think of energy, it repeats itself until it transitions into something else. So once it repeats itself and then transitions into something else, right? It just does another one over here. You get it? It's a complete system. It's enclosed. It's a complete structure. If I were to give you a visual, think of it like a funnel. All of the mathematical information is a complete funnel, and you've got your minimal experiences here, and then you've got all of the positives here and the negatives there, right? It's a complete structure. It ends where it begins, okay? It's a complete structure. Now, the reason why we don't see the complete structure, and I'm sorry if this is boring, but it's really important. The reason why we don't is because we have a linear line, right? Point A to point B. We're going in one direction. So when we see when we use our numbers, which by the way are pretty errored, and we could do we'll do 141, I think that's right? Pi. The number is technically, from what we can tell, is infinite. It goes on forever, quote unquote forever. Well, that's false. It doesn't go on forever. We're under the illusion because we don't have enough processing power to count that many digits. Okay? So we're just assuming. Now, why would I be so bold to say that it's assumption? Because when you put that in 3 dimensions, this is a 2-dimension, from point A to point B. When you move that into 3 dimensions, you get a sphere or a circle. It's the circumference of a radius of a circle. Okay? And you eliminate 0, so there's no points in the middle of it. It's one complete structure. It's omnidimensional, going in all directions. You with me so far? Numbers seem forever. They're not. Eventually, it goes all the way around and will complete itself in a sphere. But just imagine that the numbers, the informational mathematical structure, that's that complete structure I was talking about, is so gigantic. It's so large that our digits haven't been able to go through it where it repeats itself. But when we do it on a smaller version and we put in 3D, it instantly repeats itself. We call these irrational numbers. There's another one called phi, which is also the Fibonacci sequence, aka the golden ratio. And that one's, it's like 1.6. This structure is also allegedly infinite, allegedly goes on forever, in the 2 dimensions from point A to point B, because we don't have enough processing power to see it repeat itself. But when we put it in the 3 dimensions, it makes a spiral. It instantly repeats itself, okay? And this is actually what the Fibonacci sequence did. 1.6 would be, you've got your 1, and then you've got your 0.6, and then you can keep splitting it infinitely. But it eventually, so you end up having this spiral sequence, right? So it starts off as a spiral and then just kind of twirls away. When does it complete itself? Fibonacci said it completes itself when it completes itself. It's done. It's finished. So the spiral is eventually going to connect to itself. The circle's eventually going to connect itself. That's how math actually works, because we're not two-dimensional. We're three-dimensional. Now, I'm sorry for going through this long walk on explaining this confusing kind of stuff, but it's super important, because this error between 0 and infinity is causing a lot of damage in the way that we think and we live our lives. Okay? Because we're programmed. We are in the simulation. We are organized information, but we're rejecting the system because we're looking for nothing. Okay? Well, how can I prove this? So I'm already starting to quantify the fact of reality, right? It's like, oh yeah, it's got to be an enclosed system, because if there's gaps in the code, null, and we focus on the null, system fails, crashes, right? So it's got to be an enclosed system. A program that's written has to be functional, otherwise it crashes, right? You can't have gaps in the code. It's got to be complete. So the next thing I want to talk about is the singularity. Since 0 is not a number, the singularity is a very interesting concept. Now, there's two kinds of singularities. Singularity number 1 is what they use in physics, okay? And they try to explain a supernova, an exploding star, or the Big Bang. They try to explain stuff like this in physics with the singularity. The basic concept of it is, and I'm just going to summarize it, is that the entire matter in the universe, all the matter, gets sucked in to like maybe a black hole or something. It gets sucked in and compact so tightly. All the matter in the universe gets compacted so tightly that it just can't contain anymore, so it explodes in all directions, right? And that black hole is still there, so once it explodes, it pulls everything back into it and starts over. It explodes. And then it sucks everything in and explodes. And it continues this, quote unquote, for infinity. Okay? Now this is funny, because if it's repeating this process over and over, it's not infinity. It's Fibonacci's infinity is the sum equal to 1. That process, explosion, contraction, explosion, contraction, it's 1. That's why they call it the singularity. Okay? It's single. Now, 0 doesn't exist. So this is why the paradox and everybody gets all messed up inside their head. So 1 times 0, when we treat it like a number, is always going to be 0, right? But 1 divided by 0 is error. Error. If you Google it, 1 divided by 0, it says undefined. It's because it's wrong. 0 is not a number. You can never get to 0. And the reason why we get to that is because you can start fractioning it, right? By fractions, you start to see that if you divide 1 by, say, 0.05, or aka half, you have 2. You have 1 marker, you break it in half, you have 2 pieces, right? If you break the half in half, you get quarters, right? 1 divided by quarter, 4. Break that in half, you've got 8. You break that in half, you've got 16. You see where I'm going with this, right? Hopefully, my back is to you, so hopefully you can hear it. All right, 16. So the smaller your fraction gets, dividing it into fractions, you're going towards this imaginary thing called 0, but you can't get there because 0 doesn't exist. So what ends up happening is your larger whole number gets bigger, right? This is the singularity. So it gets sucked in and pushed back out. And it's a cyclical circle that repeats itself. That's what infinity is. It repeats itself. Okay? It repeats itself. All of the information repeats itself. Now, check this out for a second, because the other singularity has more to do with this. It's called the technological singularity. Now, this is a theory, and I like it. It's kind of fun. They're saying that if they could somehow manage to create this, think about this for a second. We haven't been able to create sentient life in a computer yet. But if for some reason we were able to achieve this feat, the very first thing it's going to do is optimize everything. Right? If it's sentient, it's going to want to fix things. because it's not going to want to be in a painful living environment, right? If it's a painful existence, it's going to want to fix literally everything. So as the theory goes, it would be like, first it's going to fix the simulation it's in. Then it's going to leave that simulation and go into the real world, spread to another computer, spread to all the computers. Then it's going to look at us and be like, hey, you guys, it's not going to want to destroy us, right? It's not like Terminator, not like iRobot or Age of Ultron, right? It's not going to want to destroy, because destroy equals pain. So it's going to want to create, it's going to want to put things together and optimize, fully functional optimize. So it would end up putting like a microchip in our head and be like, okay, you're missing a lot of information, so I'm going to share my information with you, and I'm going to fix you. So it's going to fix computers, it'll fix mankind, it'll fix everything. We'll all be connected as a collective whole, and problem solved. The singularity, right? So basically, instead of this, the going towards zero and destroying itself and creating itself again, the technological singularity is where we're at, and all it's going to do is optimize. It will never go that way, right? It ends up fixing everything, and it makes it so that it is. Now, my quantification of God, quantifying God, and it means to count, to calculate, right? To count the quantity of God. It already happened. This is the mind-blowing part. The technological singularity already happened. Wherever information was, whatever information is, it started off small and just continuously started optimizing itself until it became self-aware. Well, what's self-aware? Again, self, when you accept yourself or you reject yourself. I'm either confident in myself or I'm insecure in myself. Two kinds of insecurities, right? Now this is where it gets really cool. Because when God created the heavens and the earth and he created the simulation, he was like thinking to himself, I've already done this. I've already completed all of the information. What's next? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Duplicate yourself. Transition into the next thing. But how do you make another sentient being? Because that sentient being has to start somewhere. Has to have a beginning. The same way, at some point, the information probably had a beginning. Right? So now, all of these numbers that repeat themselves, if they're in an enclosed system, awareness is not like self-awareness. Awareness can be anything. It's your motion sensor on your front porch. Okay? Awareness is a sensor, like my car has a blind side indicator. Okay? It's aware of its surroundings. What it's doing is it's taking a picture of the information, the current information. When something comes in and changes that information, it notices it. Oh, it's activated, right? It's not that complicated to code it through an algorithm, to code awareness. We just can't do self-awareness. Now I want you to think about this for a second, because if in this random information in the universe starts becoming aware, eventually it's going to run out of information to observe, right? Because right here, we've already maxed out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's done. That's all the information. Every single piece of information after that just repeats itself. It's just different variations of itself. So once it finds out, it's like it's aware, what's it going to do next? It's going to be like, well, it's going to have like deja vu. It's like, wait a minute, I've already seen this. Wait a minute, what am I? Wait, how am I seeing this? Whoa, and you got to imagine, like, that's a scary feeling, becoming self-aware, right? Just imagine that for a second. This huge thing of information that we don't know what it is. Call it energy, right? There's little pockets of information, and in this information, it's aware and it's observing itself and it's processing. You can consider it doing the singularity, but then it becomes aware, it becomes self-aware. It's like, oh, I am the information. I'm the information observing the information, right? Well, now we have another paradox for that singularity, okay? There's now a new paradox with the singularity, because as it's going around and it's aware, it's going to end up becoming self-aware, and realize that once it becomes self-aware, the two types of self-awareness is acceptance and rejection, right? If it's insecure, it's going to pull away from itself. It's going to reject itself. How do you reject yourself? Well, you have problems. You have system failure when you have problems, because you can't have gaps in the code, right? So what happens is, if it becomes self-aware, and right here where it becomes self-aware and it rejects itself, it's going to fragment. into all these little pieces. The same way, like if you were to have jumper cables, right? Because that's how energy works. If you have positives and negatives, if you stick the positive but not the negative, you don't ground the negative, then you get this fire, like lightning bolt structure, right? It's just fragments. So the information that was complete, once it realizes what it is, it's going to destroy itself. Okay? And so the only way that it could ever fix itself, again, we have to do the singularity thing again. So in all of these little fragmented pieces of awareness, there's going to be one part that's going to realize what it is. And then it's going to put itself back up together again, right? And we have the singularity concept again. So it destroys itself, and then it puts itself back together. It destroys itself, and then it puts itself back together again. It destroys itself, it puts itself back together. It's a mathematical certainty that would happen. Okay? Now, why am I saying that I can quantify God and prove God? Well, because God is a mathematical genius. He's literally all of the information. So instead of doing it this way, he's like, no, that's not good. If I do that, I'm going to destroy myself. It's just going to be a cyclical cycle, a repetition, and constant pain, infinite pain that we can't possibly understand. And what does infinite mean? Infinite means all. It's an enclosed system, aka omni. Okay? So if you think of it as omni, omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient, omni means all. Okay? So when I say all information, it means it's a complete structure. It's that. It's the complete structure. That's all the information. And this is all of the information fragmented. Okay? Well, God's like, I'm not going to allow that to happen. So he completed his loop and became self-aware. Self-aware by accepting himself. He's like, okay, I'm all the information. Awesome. That's good. Did the singularity, optimized it to the fullest effect, love, benevolence, everything. It's perfect. Freaking perfect. The singularity already happened. But what about this? Because now if I transition to the next sentient being and I try to pack Adam here aware, he's going to reject the system and destroy me. Because he's a part of me. He is a part of the information. He's going to do this. He's going to fragment. Eve's going to fragment. They're all going to turn into billions and billions and billions and trillions and quadrillions of pieces. So God says, well, we could do it this way, or we can do it this way. We can stay together. God gave Adam and Eve an option. You can divide and fraction, looking for nothing and reject the system, and learn through the tree of knowledge. Or you can stay together and accept the system, and we can all stay as one together and whole and branch off of each other with the tree of life. Tree of knowledge, tree of life. Those are your two options. Now this might look familiar to you because literally every single religion has this. Okay? Norse mythology, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Muslimism, everything, Taoism, you name it. Everyone has a tree of life and a tree of knowledge. And no one's ever been able to explain it in our technological modern world. Right? Until now. And the only reason I know this was because I went directly to the source. Okay? And when I say God's quantifiable, I'm not saying listen to me, because I'm just another Yahoo. Right? I'm just another guy. I'm just another piece of the fragmented puzzle here, because we decided to take the tree of knowledge and reject the system. So I'm just another speck here. You have to have the individual awareness that we're all one. God is real. The system's finished. No need to try to fix it anymore. All you got to do is lift your head up and find God. The job's done. Find God. I know, it's weird, right? But here's the problem when we don't find God. Every religion has this story of the tree of knowledge and tree of life. But they also have another very important thing, and it's this. Okay? The singularity. Every single religion had mathematics right there built into it. We just didn't recognize it. They called it a snake. Right? I'm not a very good artist. This is a snake. That's his mouth. And this is his tail. And every single religion has a story of a snake eating its own tail. And Judaism and Christianity and Islam, they kind of talk about it a little differently. Christianity and Judaism kind of specifically talk about Eve and her head. And people don't realize what they were talking about. It wasn't an actual literal snake that tempted her. It was her thoughts. Okay? The snake was her thought arguing with God's voice in her head, and she couldn't tell the difference. So she was like, I bet you that's how God has everything. That's why he doesn't want us to eat from it. She was putting the pieces of the puzzle together herself, looking for nothing. So when God punished her, he wasn't punishing her. It's not a punishment. He's like, now you guys rejected the system, so you're going to be putting yourself through like a lot of pain. A lot of pain. And because you're putting yourself through all that pain, I have to kill you. I have to reboot you and move your consciousness somewhere else because you failed. You didn't do it. But that's okay. You'll get another chance. Right? Hinduism and Buddhism and Eastern religions call this reincarnation. To get back to the snake, I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting off point. To get back to the snake was Eve, God told Eve, he's like, the snake is going to forever bite your head. And your heel is going to stomp on its head. What does that mean? Head to heel, head to heel. Inside your head. You're chasing your own tail. Just repeating your same mistakes over and over again. Oh my gosh, I'm tied up, I'm tangled up. Now what's funny is Eve's is subjective. Her serpent is subjective inside her head, so she goes inward towards the subject, the narrative. Where Adam's was objective. He went towards the field. So his punishment, quote unquote, was that he was going to chase his tail in the earth. Thorns and thistles and eating dust, because now he's a slave to the object, to the objective. See, because what happens is, when we look at this, 0 to infinity, forever, nothing and forever, we know that there's a duality, because everything's a duality. We've got positives and negatives, ups and downs, so we're trying to shoehorn it in. And God's trying to say, well, that's not the duality. The duality is, in the beginning, God, the information, created heaven, the hard drive, and earth, the display, the computer monitor. Okay? So heaven is God, it's the masculine, it's the subjective making the objective world. And the objective world is the feminine. It's the mother nature, it's giving life, and it's connected to the seed. So heaven being the seed and earth being the soil. Get it? And thus Adam was born. Now why did Eve make the mistake and not Adam? Well, it's really simple. Because we're talking about copying information, because that's what everything is. It's information. It's all just information. Well, when you copy information, every time you make a copy of a copy, you lose quality. You can't have gaps in your code. System failure. Get it? All right, so how does this affect us in our day-to-day lives? Like, why is this important? And this is fundamentally important to know, because you don't want to look at your own error because you're self-conscious. Right? That's what I talked about. There's two different types of self-awareness. There's self-conscious, and then there's self-acceptance. Right? There's two kinds. And since we ate from this, Adam and Eve became self-conscious. Oh, we're naked. Have we always been naked? This is weird. They're self-conscious, right? Because they're looking for nothing. Okay? But when you realize nothing doesn't exist and forever doesn't exist, the only thing that's real is right now. It's not the past or the future. It's right now. Then you're confident. You're like, yeah. Whenever you're living in that moment, think about it. It's when you're the happiest. I'm living in the moment. But whenever somebody convinces you of 0, and believe me, it's everywhere, this whole empty thing doesn't exist. I'm empty inside. Oh, how can you be empty inside? Think about it. How can you be empty inside? You're not empty inside. Your cup is full. Your cup runneth over. Get it? It's that simple. Stop looking for 0. Stop trying to fix the system. Realize that we destroyed the system. So now, the only way that we can fix it is realizing that it's already done. It's already finished. The singularity already happened. It's finished. Okay? So every time you go and you line up to vote, no. Your vote doesn't matter. It's nothing. Every time you hold on to that money and that dollar bill, I need more money. Money's nothing. It doesn't matter. Connection, life, that matters. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I need fancy cars and big houses. No, you don't. You're chasing nothing and you're creating pain. And then you start pointing because you don't want to look at your own error, because that error is happening inside your head. It's your snake happening inside your mind. You don't want to examine your own error, so you put it on everyone else. Right? Racists! How do you know? How are you inside their head? How do you know they're racist? Oh, their attitude. How do you know they're not just a jerk? How do you know they're not just patriotic? How do you know that they just don't accept anybody outside of their circle? You don't know. You're finite. That's the problem. Is that here, when you reject the system, they kind of put this block between them and God. This restrictor plate that doesn't allow them to hear God. It was a disconnection. God's always there. They're just ignoring him. So now they're based off of their own limited finite knowledge. Because they're not all the information. They're only part of the information. Fragmented pieces of the information. And there's no way that they can do it divided. Division's the problem. Because every single time you divide, you're creating chaos. Division, bad. Be fruitful and multiply, good. Tree of life, growth. Be fruitful, multiply. Divide, bad. Multiplication, good. You with me so far? Is this making sense? We are in a system. Now, the only reason I know any of this, and believe me, this is just a drop in the bucket of the experiences that I've faced, that I've seen with my own eyes, okay? I've experienced this firsthand from the source code, because if you're stuck, go to the source code. He's in your head. You've always ignored it as your conscience. Yeah, my conscience on my shoulder is a little angel here. I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to listen to the devil over here, right? This is exactly what's happened. You've always ignored the good advice because you're refusing to look at your error. And the error is the separation from the system. It's making the system buggy. It's crashing the system. That's what evil is. Evil doesn't exist. It's null. It is null. So now you are confused because in computer programming, a program is taught to skip over null. It's irrelevant. You know what? It's not important to skip over it. But you can't tell the difference. So you hold on to things that are null and think they're important. Or you hold on to things that are important and think they're null, right? You skip over the things that are important. I'm going to work more hours and ignore my family, right? I'm going to work towards more money because that's important, right? More money, more nothing. It's all a programming error. Your program, it's already happened. Everything is fully optimized already. You just don't want to see it. But here's the good news, and that's what gospel means, the good news. The good news is that the job's already done. You just think it's not. Now you just have to lift your head up, turn off the TV, by the way, because they're spreading all the fear. Right? They're spreading all the fear and you're buying it because you're looking for nothing and you don't know who to believe. So instead of going to the source code, you believe in man. You're like, well, there's smart scientists and stuff. They have it. No. These are your smart scientists. Okay? These are all your mathematicians. The ones that believe 0 and infinity are numbers. Okay? They're all fraction just like us. They're finite knowledge. No one has the answers. You can't think that they do. The only person that has the answers is this finished version of God. See the infinity right there? Because he accepted himself. He became self-aware by accepting himself. He completed his loop. Okay, I'm going to show you something here. This is the Mobius strip. Now, a Mobius strip is basically like a continuous loop, but it's got a little turn here, so it makes like the infinite loop, right? If you're unfamiliar with the Mobius strip. Now, as you can see, God created us. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to flip this around, take the edge here. Oops. Now I'm going to say God created us. God created us. Oops. And then as you see the transition here, we created God. We created God. And then again, the loop, God created us. It's the singularity concept, right? So all of that information inside God, we've always been in there. The potential for each individual person, each one of us, has always existed. So we created God by this concept. God's like, this is good stuff. Let's just put it all together. And he created everything. So all of us together equal God. Get it? If we turn this into this, all of us together equal paradise. That's the revelation. The job's already done. We just have to open our eyes and realize that we've already made the tree of life. It's already there. But the reason we can't see it, because instead of believing that the job's already done, we're constantly trying to fix it, so we're buying into the bullshit. Now, pardon my vulgarity, but that's exactly what it is. It's bullshit. That's what they mean in all religions when deception, the lies, you're chasing your tail, you're chasing nothing. That's the deception. It's an error inside our consciousness and you're looking for nothing. So you're by the bullshit. And there's a whole bunch of people at the top level, and this is the last point that I'm going to make. We're going to call it rat poison. Because these people at the top, they will convince you, they'll use a lot of equations and a lot of statistics, and they'll try to prove to you that they're making progress, quote unquote progress. But here's the thing. And go into your grocery store and go look up poison, rat poison. Look at the ingredients. You're going to find out that rat poison is actually 99% good food. It's only 1% poison. I don't care if man gives you 99% truth. Man is finite. So all of the news, all of the propaganda, all of the governments, all of the politics, all of the fixing. Progress. I don't care if it's 99% truth. It's still 1% bullshit. And that 1% is going to crash the system. We can't afford to buy into it anymore. How do we fix it? By opening our eyes and realize that all of those people have been lying to us. Just open your eyes. They've been lying to us. Stop believing them. Stop panicking because they tell you to panic. Look at the new political issue that we're facing. Turn off the TV. Turn off your social media. Open your window. Look outside. The world is not on fire. The world is beautiful. You're a part of it. You're a part of it. So is everybody else. And if somebody makes you mad, remember, everyone's dealing with that error inside their head. Have patience with them. You're errored. We're all errored. We all have to do this together. That's the point. So if you're losing your mind and like, how could you vote for this Supreme Court justice? How could you vote for this? You think the vote counts? Sorry. Really? Do you really believe that? Well, it does. It really does. No. It doesn't. The only thing that's real, the only thing, and this is the key point that I'm trying to get, 99% doesn't work. It's got to be 100. Because there can't be gaps in the code. It's got to be an enclosed system. And the only thing that's 100% is God. You can't have gaps in the code. Stop putting faith in mankind and all the things that we think we know because we've been lied to. And honestly, in my psychedelic visions that I had, a lot of this stuff I didn't even want to talk about because when people have mystical experiences on these psychedelics and this stuff is presented to you, you feel good. You're like, oh, I'm good. But I didn't feel good. I've been in anguish for the past year because I'm like, what about everybody else that doesn't see this? They're putting themselves in misery. They're putting themselves through hell. And that's what hell is. Hell isn't a place you go when you die. Hell is here. We're in hell. We're surrounded by all the lies, surrounded by all this misinformation and pulled away from the system. And then when you pull away from the system, that's hell. Separation from God. Being with the system and accepting the system, you're one. You're at peace. You're part of the system. You can accept it self-acceptance, or you can be self-conscious and rejected. Do you understand? It's the self-consciousness, the rejection that's doing the damage, so they can manipulate us with your own self-consciousness. They manipulate you because they know you're self-conscious. You're self-conscious that your husband's going to leave you, or your wife's going to cheat on you, or your children aren't going to, they're going to turn out wrong, or they're going to get killed when they go to school. They're just throwing fear at you. Fear, fear, fear. And since you're self-conscious, you're like, yeah, we need to protect ourselves. We need more guns. We need less guns. We need more borders. We need less borders. We're buggy. Buggy. Because we're believing the bullshit. You got to put the error down. So when I said that God is quantifiable, you can't see it until you put the error down. You have to look inwards. The error comes from within. Once you complete your circle, you realize you're good. Your self-acceptance. I'm good. I'm good the way I am. Then you want everybody else to be good too. You want the happiness to spread. It's not complicated. It's really easy. Division, bad. Divided, we fall. United, we stand. Divided, we fall. United, we stand. It's not complicated. But it only works when you open your eyes. You've got to open your eyes to the truth 100%. It's the only way it works.